Welcome to this presentation on what the meta is going on. This links to a preprint publication that's currently going through review process, which is mapping and making sense of qualitative evidence synthesis. So a real focus here on qualitative evidence synthesis, which doesn't include currently mixed methods synthesis. So that's something to consider. And this is a follow-up brief recording from the seminar I produced earlier. So briefly, the aim of the review and or what I intended to do was to map the landscape of qualitative evidence synthesis and consider how operationalizable approaches are, consider the philosophical grounding of approaches, consider the papers that support the development of these synthesis methodologies and methods, and develop a decision tool to help researchers choose what the most appropriate approach to qualitative evidence synthesis when reviewing is. So as a background to that, the thought process for me behind that was that I was less clear essentially when you think about qualitative reviewing, um, how and which approach to choose and why. I was certain around a few approaches, but I didn't know them all. So I wanted to map that. But also, from a philosophical point of view, I was very happy with empirical approaches to things like grounded theory, where we have social constructivist grounded theory with a particular approach, with a particular paradigmatic view, as against other Straussian or Glaserian approaches. So, from empirical qualitative research methodologies, I felt like it was very clear, established frameworks, processes that could be accessible and operationalizable in a quite straightforward way. But I wasn't sure that qualitative reviewing was that simple. So, this really was a case of mapping that and trying to suggest a way forward for that more than anything else. The way I did that is to use the Prisma's Scope and View framework, which is a mapping framework which utilizes set processes of searching, of extracting information, does it for me in a descriptive way, with the idea behind that is to say, well, this is what's here, this is what's missing, this is what we're sure about, and this is what we're less sure about. So it's quite valuable in terms of identifying gaps or way forwards. And that's a fair bit of what was done here. But what we have in the paper itself is a lot of extracted tables and information so that we can hopefully, as a result of the paper, get an idea of what the best way forward is for any particular approach and topic that you may have. When I think about the findings that came through here, we've got 14 review methodologies that were identified, five aggregative synthesis methods, not methodologies, and 10 interpretive synthesis methods. So that the methods for me are where we've identified, or an author's identified an approach to synthesis, but hasn't given it in a bigger picture of all the steps you might need to go through from the start, from when you search right through to the end development of what you want. So it's sort of just the synthesis process that might potentially could be tagged on to um, uh, a other frameworks or other approaches. A really good example, and probably the best example, is JBI and their meta aggregation approach, which tagged onto their reviewing system. So really clear, and one that I recommend at the end of this. What we also have in here is, like I say, a set of methodologies too, which give you the complete processes. And at the end of it, I recommend some ways forward. So what we've got in front of us, or what you may have experienced, is quite a fragmented landscape, and the ability to choose within that is quite limited. When we think about mapping what's going on what's methodologies there are, this is a limited snapshot of the methodologies that are named, with the most popular at the bottom of this figure and the least popular at the top. And you can see meta-ethnography, meta-synthesis, framework synthesis, meta-study. Thematic synthesis, narrative synthesis were the most popular, with meta-ethnography by far being the most popular. Meta-synthesis, the second most framework, and then meta-study. What I would note as you look at this is the meta-synthesis has different stages within it. Metaethnography is more consistent with the seven-stage approach that's developed from the originators in 1988. The framework synthesis, again, I felt more certain about set steps, meta study, the same, and the same for thematic synthesis and narrative synthesis, although narrative synthesis is slightly different in terms of, I think each narrative synthesis that's done could be has the potential to be a bit different in terms of what's produced. When we think about methods and these sections that could tag into a review or a technique you could use to help bring together in an aggregative way, a way that honors the original use of language, or interpretive way where you put your lens and your interpretation on the data. We have the two graphs here, and you can see here the most popular interpretive method is meta-grounded theory, interpretive synthesis, thematic analysis, and then it goes down into single digits. And for the aggregation, we've got content analysis and meta aggregation is clearly the most popular, and then others again just having one approach. So the caution is with this is how do you apply it to an overall review? Have you thought about the big questions of how the methods, methodology, and paradigmatic views link up? So if selecting these, just think to yourself, are you happy with what's being said here? Like I say, for meta-grounded theory, um, do they link on and do they mention, this is a question probably for you, which type of grounded theory that they're drawing from? Straussian, Glassian, Shalmesian, Clarkian, and so forth and so on. So the question is here, how sure are you that you can deliver this? Does it make sense? Does it translate from asking these different questions of the approach? I think one which is a clear standout winner for me is the meta-aggregation at the moment because it clearly links in with JBI's work, which is really nice. So, a couple of things to think about with methodologies and and methods. Are we getting aggregative summaries, quantifying, avoiding reinterpretation, not putting your lens on, e.g., JBI meta-aggregation, or are we interpreting to some shape or form, putting our own comments, views, coding on top, and then reinterpreting the data to some shape or form to generate some themes or theory? And that could be something like meta-ethnography. So there's two things to keep in mind. What's the end goal in terms of the process that are involved? When we dig a bit deeper into the methods that I think are currently quite usable, quite well considered, we've got things like metaethnography. I've done my own social constructivist metaethnography, or we've got the Emerge framework. The key differences there is what I've slapped on top of metaethnography is, or linked in with, integrated with, is social constructivist grounded theory methods and techniques that help an iterative process of theory generation. So it's quite a different beast, and you need to look at the framework to understand that. The emerge really is looking at the traditional seven phases and how you take that forward. There's some commonalities within both approaches, but the outcome is a theory always, or model or process for the social constructivist methodology, whereas the emerge would often, in my view, generate a theme and there may be a process. The development of the model or process is what's the key differential between those two approaches. So what other methodologies are there? We've got metasynthesis. The danger is here is that I think it's well developed, mentioned a lot, but there's a lot of different frameworks with different stages. So we've got no consistency. So just be careful when you choose an approach, you're happy with that approach. And it might be you want to think about your philosophical worldview and how that translates through and what it means for what you're doing and what the outcome is. Framework synthesis, really nice, and some nice couple of examples here from Brunton and Booth and Carroll. Slightly different approaches, but an a priori conceptual framework is used, and then in agreed stages, often familiarization, framework selection, indexing, charting, and mapping, um, which for me is really clear and is a really useful addition to the qualitative synthesis. So have a look at those. The paper gives worked examples, it gives further steps and further information on these approaches. Meta study from Patterson's got multiple stages in and is looking to analyze the data, the results, the methods and methodology used. and the theories behind it. So a lot behind it there. Probably the depth and the different stages there is one reason I haven't ventured into this field too much. But some recent references for you to consider about how you take it forward. So, in terms of what's the most operationalizable, my sense was framework synthesis, meta study, meta-ethnography, meta-synthesis, yes, but just caution about which approach you choose and consider that. Least operationalizable for the moment are some of the methods. So, the meta aggregation, I think, is also operationalizable as a method. So, thinking about the operationalized approaches, we've got JBI meta-aggregation, really nice approach, honors the data. We've got meta-ethnography, framework synthesis, meta-study, and subsets of meta-synthesis. Those are the ones I think are most operationalizable currently, but further work I'm sure was coming out and maybe already out as at the point of doing this lecture. To help you navigate this, we've got a decision tree. So I want you to focus on the ways to consider these approaches in terms of their paradigms. Maybe question yourself that whether we're getting theory generation or conceptual insight as a result, as an outcome. Are we getting actionable findings? Or are we be doing something a bit bigger and broader? So at this level here of what the intention is something you need to consider, and that might help direct your decision of what you do. This certainly might not be the best or most perfect way to present the decision tree, but it's a step forward in my book for choice. Recommendations as we go forward, certainly think about decision tree, prioritize methodological transparency, ensure that we've got alignment between your research question, your philosophy, and your method. So when you're thinking about things like meta-synthesis, just check that and check that for clarity. We certainly need more work in this area without doubt. We need investigation into different aspects of these approaches. And when I looked at the 52 articles that are included here, we need more frameworks to develop out some of those other different approaches so we understand fully about how to deliver them. And that's probably where I wanted to get to. I know it's been brief, but it's probably covered all the major points regarding this paper. So good luck with your work and consideration this and keep in touch with QRig here and more. There'll be certainly more to follow. Thank you.